We welcome in former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst Frank Corrado. He had the intermissions last night on the regional Jets,
which means
telecast.
You had to watch every minute of that game, unlike us.
So you would think.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, two very different broadcasts last night. Like I didn't see the Canucks show, but I could tell you what the Jets show was saying. Whoo boy, was that dominant, start to finish.
Yeah,
didn't even let him into the game. Wow.
So give us your assessment of the Canucks.
I said it in the pregame show. So we do a 30-minute pregame show at that Jets regional. And I said there's a very good chance that with the way this road trip has gone for Vancouver, all the noise around the team, it's their last game of the trip, there's a chance they have one foot on the plane ready to go home. And Winnipeg is going to have to push that other foot onto the plane. And it didn't take long for that to happen. Like it almost had the feeling of a scrimmage, where like it was Winnipeg just out there, and there was a token team just playing against them. Hey, go in this situation, do this. That's how it felt. It felt like a controlled scrimmage.
Washington Generals.
Yeah. Like, and I'm not trying to be a smartass. I'm really not trying to be a smartass. And it's been a long road trip, and it has, there's been a lot of noise around the team, and I very sensitive to all that because I've been in those situations, and it sucks, and it's hard to get through, but. That's the reality of what that game was like last night. It was just one foot on the plane, felt like a controlled scrimmage, and at no point did you ever feel like Vancouver had any fight in them in that game.
And there's been almost, I think, in my opinion, zero. He's had a couple of multiple goals against games, Kevin Lakin, but there's been zero times where I thought he cost them the game. Do those first two goals, certainly 3 of the first 4 and 4 of the first 5. I mean, there's a lot of fault there on Kevin Lakin, and they weren't great, but does that sink a team when they see that the guy that has saved their bacon becomes so fallible in one night?
I kind of think, Blake, you can only ask so much of the guy. Like the first one, sure, I'll give you that one. He plays it on his forehand. Velarde read perfectly, but the other one, like Kyle Connor's going to the net. Now Jolson has to make a decision. Like who am I going at here? And ultimately Connor's the one who scores it. And then the breakaway, the Kyle Connor breakaway, I can't fault him on that. Like the guy's got 26 goals now.
No, not on that one. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got 26 goals now. He's quietly one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. And you gave him, as a team, 3 glorious chances. Like I'm sorry. Like I think the first one for sure. But after that, it's like he needs a little help in front of him. And he didn't get that on the second, and he definitely didn't get that on the third one. Like that's one of those ones where you need a forward to cover up for the D-man. Like the guys call it a 200-foot game for a reason, because the forward in that situation, who was JT Miller, has to skate 200 feet back to his own net. Like that's the definition of not being 200 feet right there. If you're just kind of coasting and then you let the guy skate past you, it's one play. Not going to go crazy about it, but that's what makes 200-foot players 200-foot players. They skate all the way back.
It's one play, but I can't remember a block of games where JT has looked just so disengaged. When you go back to the no-show in Carolina on Friday, Toronto on Saturday, he wasn't exact.
And coach concurs clearly.
And the minutes are dropping here. A player with that kind of fire, how do you even begin to start motivating them, right? Like
you have to direct that fire in the right place, whether it's the player who does that or the coach who steps in and has a say in how that's done. But that fire is what made JT Miller so good last season. And it's why a lot of people talked about the Canucks as this dual threat down the middle of the ice with a guy who can play against anyone and is, hard to play, all that kind of stuff. But when that fire kind of gets misplaced, and whether that's him or whatever's been going on with the team, like a lot of that has to fall on him. Ultimately, he's the guy. Like you're responsible for your own play. So if he's not able to make that happen, that's where Rick Tocchet has to kind of put on his Rick Tocchet hat that made him so effective as an assistant in Pittsburgh with Kessel and Malkin and all those guys. Like I don't know. There's something has to give as far as how his play has been and that kind of fire and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. It's night and day different, from last year to this year.
Well, he's got to be injured. No, like how does the guy who was one of the key leaders of this team, who on almost a nightly basis said, "Follow me, I'll drag you guys there." How does it become this unless he's injured? And if he's not injured, holy cow, what a problem. That's
the most logical explanation. It's also the most logical explanation to when Pettersson, has had his issues this year. Like, it's just when you're a guy that's relied upon that much and you can't play at 100%, and then, you're also playing against difficult, matchups all the time. It's the reality. Like, not everyone. There's a handful of guys, or maybe a little more than a handful of guys, a dozen guys that can do that kind of stuff 85% or 80%. It's just like it's not something that really can happen for a lot of these guys. So that's the most logical explanation. And also, which game was it? Was it the Washington game where he took that hit and he was really laboring, like he kind of had the shoulder to the ear? He went back to the bench. That was concerning as well. I know he didn't necessarily leave, but there's plenty that makes you concerned about, the star guys on this team. And if the star guys on the team aren't doing it, like you're going to have a hard time, like come playoff, like as we talk about the playoffs, it's going to be difficult for these guys to keep treading water without the big boys kind of doing their thing.
Brilliant segue, Frank. That was my next question. Is this team better than Calgary and St. Louis? Or are you confident that they will make the playoffs in what's shaping up to be a 3-team derby? Maybe Utah gets back involved because they got some pieces to trade and they're getting healthier. But, Canucks versus the field here for that second wild card. Are you confident that they're better and are going to make the playoffs?
I'm not, given the way that they've played. Like, I think on paper, you'd look at it and say they shouldn't be in this situation. They're the logical choice to make the playoffs out of all those teams. But for me, Calgary is the team that maybe stands out above the three, where it's like they have a really good thing going right now. And they have some injuries, like Zari's hurt. Mantha got hurt earlier in the year. He's not coming back. He had the ACL. So, like, they've had, they've had their stuff to get over, their adversity. And they're different than the Canucks because they're kind of this cohesive group that seems like they all believe in things. Huberdeau's been a great story. Nazem Kadri's been a nice story. The goaltender, Dustin Wolf, has been, given an opportunity now and has a good chance to, he's going to be in the Calder conversation. So, like, Calgary seems like it's, rainbows and sunshine, and Vancouver seems like it's the dark rain that oftentimes is in the city. It feels like it's following the team. So, and St. Louis is right there with Calgary. I don't think Utah. I think Utah's got a ways to go. Just they're pretty leaky defensively. And so I wouldn't have them in the tier of those teams. But, like, if you're asking me if it's Calgary or Vancouver right now, I get a way better feeling from Calgary than I do around the Canucks.
Might seem hokey. The two Goudreau teams are exceeding everybody's expectations and then some in Columbus and Calgary. You wonder if there's some inspiration there, too, from the start of the season.
The Columbus thing is crazy. They're like the cardiac kids. And they're, like, this is why you can't make the excuse of injuries, because they're missing guys like they've missed Goodbranson, Jenner. I think Chinakhov has been out for a while. Danforth has been out for a while. Sean Monahan's not playing, and he's going to be out for a little while longer. Like, take away 5 guys that are the guts of your team.
And they're not even good to begin with.
Right.
They're missing those 5 guys.
But you know what they have going for them? Zach Werenski is in the conversation with Quinn Hughes for, the best defenseman in the NHL. I truly believe that. Quinn is unbelievable. Zach Werenski is right there this season. Sillinger and Kent Johnson have really taken nice steps this year, which needed to happen for them. And Marchenko, who was good to begin with, has really taken another step. Like, he's more rounded of a player, and the guy he plays with, Voronkov, has had a nice thing going as well. And they're doing it with, like, they've played the crap out of Merzlikins who I'm not even sure like he can handle that. And they haven't been playing Tarasov. They finally played him last night. They've been calling up Jet Greaves from the minors to play. So it's kind of weird how Columbus has done it. They score a lot, they give up a lot. Like they are the cardiac kids. They're pretty. It's pretty exciting hockey. It's actually the complete opposite of watching Canucks hockey right now, where Columbus is very exciting and Vancouver's not that. Like it's not exciting hockey. It's not. Sorry.
No. So we've talked. We've talked a lot about low event hockey. We've talked a lot about how they are bereft of any kind of rush, transition, chance ability. We have talked mostly about the Redwoods and the lack of puck transportation on the defensive side of the offensive side of the ledger. But Frank, Tocchet mentioned the Jets' speed pregame. He mentioned the Jets' speed postgame. They have trailed 6-0 twice this season to the Winnipeg Jets, who can really skate, and the New Jersey Devils, who can really skate. And that's been a theme against the Devils for several years now. They just haven't been able to match pace. How big a deficiency is Vancouver's lack of speed? Like, is it a fatal flaw? And are there going to be matchups around the National Hockey League like Winnipeg and New Jersey where they just seemingly is so exposed?
I guess like the thing with speed is there's a lot of guys that can skate fast in the league. It's just, what do you do with it? Like, do you move the puck fast? Do you anticipate for your teammates fast? Like that's kind of where I go with speed. I don't necessarily categorize it all the same. And I can tell you for free that on the Jets regional first intermission last night, that's what we were talking about. Like I did a pack on Winnipeg's speed and how Vancouver couldn't handle it because it was very evident in that game. So I think, a lot of that comes down to, yes, you do need to have the players that are fast, but go through the list of guys, that you have. Pettersson's not really fast. Brock Besser's not really fast. JT Miller is not playing overly fast. DeBrusk he's not fast, in the grand scope of the league, right? So all of a sudden now, I'm pretty deep into your top six, and I'm like, who's your burners there? And you passed on speed. You had Lafferty, you had Mikheyev, and hey, you're gone. You're done with them. That's fine. Those guys couldn't score, and the team needed to score more this year. So you brought in DeBrusk. Maybe Heinen was going to give you more scoring punch. I can reason with that. But if you're not going to have the burners, like Matt said, or it's just or Blake said, you need to have a plan in place where everyone can look fast. And I think that's what Tocchet has tried to do this year. With the way they want to, slash players through the middle of the ice and, push pucks into the neutral zone and have that second wave of defense, jumping up. But on a night like last night, where you get to see Connor and Ehlers and Lowry and all those guys, you're like, there's a difference. Like, there's a difference between wanting to play fast and scheming it out as a team and the guys that are the thoroughbreds. And Winnipeg has a few of those guys last night.
Well, Frank, what they've lacked is anybody not named Quinn Hughes getting a pass to a forward at full speed. They've got one player that can make that pass. And so if you're not fast, the best thing you could do, as you just outlined, is have your guys at their top speed coming at a pretty stationary defense on the other team. But if you don't have somebody providing those passes to those forwards at full speed, it's not going to work.
No, it gets bogged down a lot right now with Vancouver. And like Quinn Hughes is the 1A category of defenseman. They're lucky to have him, but the drop off from when he is on the bench, when he is on the ice to when he is on the bench, it can't be that significant. Like it has to be a little less steep of a drop off, but that's the reality of what it is right now. And I think when you have, like, if you want to have the big guys on the back end that don't move it as good, you almost have to take up the Carolina model, where it's like we have all these big, fast, meaty forwards where we know, Carolina's got puck movers, so I'm not gonna say they don't, but the way they play, it's like we know if we punt it or go glassing out or the high flips, we know we got foot races that we're gonna win, or we know we're gonna turn that into forechecks. And the Canucks don't have that either. So a lot of that falls onto the shoulders of Quinn Hughes. I think now more than ever, like I know you guys have been talking me into this for a while now. I think now more than ever is the time where Hronek probably needs his own pair. You just like it's too drastic. It's too drastic from when Hughes is on the ice to when Hughes is on the bench. They have to do it, and it's out of necessity now.
And what you said is also why they don't win their dump and chases. They play dump and chase so often, but they don't get there fast enough to put the pressure on the defenders. And so much of the dump and chase is the other team just picks up the puck and turns the other way, and you don't win the puck back, and it's sort of pointless to play dump and chase at that point.
Yeah. Well, like last night, Winnipeg did a good job breaking it out. Lowry was back. He cross-checked someone. Next thing you know, Sandberg's got it, and it's gone. It didn't spend a lot of time in Winnipeg's zone.
That Lowry line is fantastic. Like last year, we talked about Bluger, Joshua, and Garland being amongst the best third lines in hockey, and the Winnipeg third line was cited a lot. But boy, they've got size. They can play skill. They got a lot going for them. That's a heck of a hockey team. Frank, outstanding work again. Thank you for the time, and we will catch up next Wednesday.
Okay, boys. Thank you.